Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to some of you, and peace out to the rest of you. Black heart, black mind, black end. Again, hit the share button because the message is more important than the messenger. Let me make this quick if I can. First thing, I've been on vacation, so sorry about not posting and all, but I've been interrupted. Like, vacations are very interrupting. They're very involving. So I finally found a little bit of time. And before I decide to just be lazy the rest of this day and start watching some movies and everything else, I just got through swimming. So I figured, well, let me go ahead and catch up with you all. So this will be regarding 3 subjects. First one, regarding Dr. Umar Jackson. I know, sorry about that. I said Jackson, I meant Johnson. Freudian slip. Regarding Dr. Johnson. Look, here's the deal. I listened to the address from him regarding race-mixed Africans. I don't think that you're really going to be able to get your point across, Mr. Johnson. I almost said Jackson again, and here's why. Once you had that argument with Sarah Seti and you brought up his shade, even though he never brought that up with you, you became the divisive factor. Sarah Seti has gone even so far as to say that Caucasians are another species. They're not even related to us genetically. He's gone so far as to say that. But you're sitting up and saying that he sees a Caucasian when he looks in the mirror. Well, you said that. You never took those words back that I know of. So, no, Brother Johnson, the divisive factor in here was you. And we've picked up on that. When it's sisters, of course, I don't know of any sisters you got into a beef with like that, but you simply don't even bring up the issue of shade with sisters except to say, despite your shade, you're African. With brothers, it's generally the same thing until you get angry. And then when they've not brought it up, you do. Frankly, Dr. Johnson, if you could see my face, you would say the reason you don't agree is because you think that you should have had an automatic advantage, and you're mad because the day that you were old enough to date was the day that all changed and you no longer had this advantage being light-skinned. That's what you would say. So, really, you're not that unifying as you may think. You're actually quite divisive. Whether you meant to be or not, you're divisive, sir. And understand this. Even though I agree that if you have an African parent, you're African. And psychologically, you should be African. And that one's love for a non-African, especially a non-African parent who comes from a group that does not like us, should be limited to one's personal life. And like you said, one should say to that parent, my love for you is personal. Our concern for our people is political. Very well put, sir. The fact remains that ambiguous or race-mixed African men don't always, many times will not have the option, in the West at least, to bring it back to black. So if you're going to talk about interracial dating and mixing, don't sit up here and point the finger at men, especially ambiguous-looking men or race-mixed African men who live in the West. Don't say anything to us about it. We're not the ones shunning light-skinned women or dark-skinned women. That's not us. We are the ones that largely keep it open until we get older and older and older and sisters don't want us. Now, I had a talk with my former boss, who since has transferred to another company and job and everything else in another city. Had a talk with him. He sent a message to me, Assalamu alaikum. I thought it was another person because of a similarity in the names. And so I made mention of, yeah, man, my girlfriend and I on vacation, because the person for whom I mistook him, always gets upset when I call my wife my girlfriend. So I do it to tick him off. And my wife and girlfriend are the same person, but I do it just to tick this other guy off. But when my former boss wrote back and said, I hope you mean your wife. Did you move her in from North Africa? I was like, oh, okay, this is that guy. My bad. So he and I chatted a little bit. And I told him, no, I married someone of American citizenship, Somali origin. He said, oh, man, okay, so you kept it with a sister then. Because I remember the talk we had, and I was afraid that if it didn't work out in North Africa, that you weren't going to be with no more sisters. But I can't blame you, Aki. I mean, I married a Filipina. And you know what? I told him. I said to him, after you and I had that talk, you and I had that chat about April, I believe. After we had that chat, eventually the summer the summer vacation kicked in, as you know. I went back. The divorce had already started with the North African by the time you and I had that conversation. But when I went back to the States for the summer vacation, talk with my folks a little bit, and in all honesty, they told me about some things that had happened when I was too young to remember. And so in any case, my vacation ended. I went, back to my city to work, and my friend tried to hook me up. The one that introduced me to the North African tried to hook me up with 3 others, and the attractive one was the one that said, "Don't even send him my picture. He's not my type. Is he even black?" And that jarred my memory of 2001 before I ever met you. And in all honesty, I realized I came to a conclusion at that point. I would never approach a sister again, continental or otherwise. I'm not approaching our women. It didn't matter what region. Dominican Republic, maybe. Even then, I wasn't so sure, because maybe my shade was an unfair advantage and I didn't want that. So where would I have the highest chance of my shade being a neutral issue? Southeast Tropical Asia, as you said. Your words were sticking out in my mind. And I was like, I need to go ahead and consider Southeast Tropical Asia. Maybe Malaysia, maybe Indonesia, maybe the Philippines. Consider that. Because that was one area that stuck out. When you started talking, I realized that's one area that stuck out where black men do not regret that. And you know what else happened, man? I said to him, in all honesty, if I had not found out that a lady teacher noticed me, I would have never known that she noticed me. And I would have never thought to say anything to her. It would not have occurred to me. And so, in all honesty, it almost did not happen. So we explained that much to him, and I asked him, look, remember the friend you told me about that got married to a Filipina woman, and he divorced her because he felt guilty about how well she was treating him? Who taught him to feel guilty about stuff like that? And he said, black women. And I said, exactly. I told him, you and I don't owe anybody any apologies for marrying out, because it was never a choice. The choice to accept lesser treatment from within our ranks, that's not a choice. That's not something that we owe to anybody. And frankly, whatever you go through in childhood from other dudes, eventually dudes outgrow that. What you and I dealt with was the fact that the sisters were not outgrowing that as they got older. And if you have to grow up and mature, why don't they? You did the right thing. More brothers that are even unambiguous and even are more selected by sisters are understanding the same thing. So we had that talk, Brother Johnson, and I'm just going to let you know, when it comes to race-mixed African men, yeah, they are all, biologically and psychologically African, and that's true. But by the same token, Brother Johnson, you got to keep this in mind too. Bruh, we don't owe it to marry back into the race, because it was not an option for us. If you've had a hard time finding your queen, understand we've had darn near an impossible time. That same one that'll give you a rough time will put up walls for us. Walls, sir. And will not consider tearing those walls down until someone that they wanted has taken their value away. Until that point, they absolutely will not consider ambiguous race-mixed African men. Absolutely not. Even if they like us, social pressure is too hard on them to where they're just not allowed to do that. And now, a lot of them, sir, they're having a swirling movement. Not brothers, they're having a swirling movement. I saw it in the Midwest back in 2019. Never seen so many sisters walking around with outright mayonnaise dudes. Not Latino, not Native American, not even Arab for that matter. But pretty much sisters been choosing to get with men, white and Arab. Those who could be the most snobbish about their bloodlines and the least inclined to consider black women. That's who they want when they want a swirl. Maybe a Chinese guy, because they're not much better. And that's going to be the second thing I'm going to talk about. Perfect segue into the next thing. Next thing I want to talk about was the anti-Asian hate crime bill. Y'all tell me if it's been passed into a law or not. I'm not sure if it's actually been a law, but I know that it's been a bill that's been talked about on both sides of Congress. It's been debated. Of course, we didn't get such, even any bills introduced have not made such progress. They don't get out of the, if they get out of the House of Representatives, they certainly do not get through the Senate and on to any president's desk. What does this tell you? What this tells you, Black America, is of course that the religion of America is still white supremacy. So that's the first thing it tells you. Understand, what they wanted was in other words, a few rogue white folks that are violent and willing to launch these attacks are now being taken as an excuse for the Chinese and Korean communities in the United States to come after us black folk. And their own youth have said this. Their youngsters have said it. So I'm going to say this, Black America. In order to have a so-called Black Asian coalition, that ain't going to happen. But in order to accept allies from amongst the youth of the Chinese and Korean communities, it's okay to accept allies from amongst the youth on an individual basis. But there has to be a condition. And the condition has to be this. They have to be willing to betray their elders. See, one young Asian man whose nationality I did not ask said that the more traditional they are in his community, the more racist they are against black folk. That means that anti-blackness is a part of the Asian tradition, or the Eastern Asian tradition he's talking about. They're enemies. With what's going on in Palestine right now, you and I know that that's actually an extension of white supremacy. Yeah, it's Islamophobia and anti-Arab hatred, but the same Palestinians that are victims of the Israelis would say that they're white. So, that being said, we have to keep in mind that we got to we have to accept only allies on an individual basis, and that individual has to betray the elders of their community. Really the racists, so to speak. But they pretty much have to be willing to betray the majority of their community. When a young person comes along and is given information and helping and advice and things like that, that's fine, if they mean it. But if they really want to work full-time as an ally, you got to say to them, are you willing to betray your people? If they're willing to do so, that is fine. Then we need to be willing to be as good and equally allies in return and in exchange. Because right now, most of us, because we're reacting to the information that everybody else is against us, because of that information and the shock that we're still somewhat going through, even though we've been talking like this since at least 1995, we still have this issue in which some of us are too eager to be allies to anyone else other than ourselves, and others of us are actually so gung-ho and the pendulum swung so far the other way, we don't want to be allies even to those who mean well. Both of these are extremes. Black folk, please avoid that. Also, keep this in mind. We're not to blame the Asian community for whatever protection they get from the U.S. government. We are to blame white America for that, because they're the ones that actually decide to extend the protection. The Asian communities, i.e. the Chinese and the Koreans, requested it. Massa decided to extend it so as to further aggravate the grudge. That's what Massa does, and that's who he is. So don't blame them because they got what they asked for. blame the one who gave them what they asked for not giving us what we asked for under the same conditions. Third thing I'm going to talk about. And that is that Mr. Samuels has been accused again and again and again of being GAY and being into dudes. And I mean, I don't think he is. He's a little soft in the manners. That doesn't mean he's a soft, easy target to go beat up on, but he's soft in the mannerisms. And of course, he's he's into the suits, and he's somewhat elitist. So I understand why some people might say he ain't macho. But understand that there has always been a major difference between a dude that's not macho and a dude that is GAY. Those are two different things. And we in the black community have made it a point to just sit up here and just talk and call people all kind of GAY for no good reason. And we got to stop that mess. That's trifling. We know better. We just don't like to actually do and be better, but we know better. It is trifling to call someone GAY without evidence of them being with their own gender. That's it. There needs to be evidence of that below the belt interest in their own gender before you sit up and say it and level an accusation like this. There really needs to be proof. And we have become a community that likes to go on a witch hunt with no proof, not even any evidence, just accusations. We need to cut that mess out. We need to stop that mess. What the wuck is wrong with us? We don't need to agree with that kind of lifestyle. We always like to take that route where, I ain't even saying anything's wrong with it. That's you, but just go ahead and come out of the closet and say it. We've made it into an environment in which the only thing someone can say that others would even believe is, okay, I confess I'm into that. Anything else, nobody's going to believe it. That's a messy community. And that's what we became. We've really been headed in this direction for a long time. I can remember this when I was I can remember stuff, that type of tendency amongst a lot of us back when I was 13 and 14. And I can remember reasons that people would say, oh, that ninja a hoe. In my case, his hair's straight. He a hoe. You know he can't fight. Of course he can't fight. He GAY. Somebody started that rumor once, but that was quickly squashed by friends of mine, fortunately. And the problem is this: in our community, that rumor becomes a stepping stone. When you were said to be into other guys, at that point, you wind up later on, especially if those charges don't stick and people can't get you canceled, you wind up later on being accused of being into kids. Now, I've said this: my support for Kevin is very conditional, very much so. And it is also very situational. I do not support everything about him. It doesn't really matter to me. He wears suits. He can. It's fine. He paid for them. I don't. I don't have to. I paid for the clothes that I do wear. What I wear matters to no one anyway except my boss and my students. Sometimes my wife. So I'm not even tripping about stuff like that. It just doesn't really matter to me. Certain things just don't really make a difference. What matters to me is what matters to you. And that is that we finally have a man who is flip-flopped, turned 180 degrees, and he's gone from putting men down and telling men stuff that they'd been lied to about from the first place anyway, and finally took the same tone and told these ladies, okay, miss, you're bringing this baggage, you're bringing these debits, you're bringing this, and you're demanding all of these credits and lack of baggage and optimal situations. Miss, you're gonna die alone. He's finally telling them that they're not entitled to all the things they have demanded, especially in exchange for what little they're bringing in, and for most of what they're not bringing. And he managed to go mainstream doing it. I support his message right now at this point, with or without him being in the mainstream audiences. Somebody from my hometown said, you know what? I would like to know if I could be the Kevin Samuels of black investment. Someone else said, go ahead and do it. I don't mind. I'm okay, fine, sure. He's gone mainstream. People from my hometown now know who the heck this man is. And if I do get to go back and visit this summer, I don't know yet, but if I do go back and visit this summer, some people I'm going to tell in person, this is the channel. Hit it up. Because I've been on this long before they knew who he was. And most of you listening also, you've been on this long before. We know what it is that he brought mainstream because we've been in it before he brought it mainstream. But unfortunately, what bothers me is a high probability that somebody's going to come out and try to blame him for something to do with kids. Not because he's into dudes, but because they will not be able to prove that he's into guys. See, remember, this happened with Mr. Jackson. I don't mean Derek. I'm talking about Michael. You know, there were the jokes, oh, he's into dudes, and there were jokes were like that. There was some similar jokes about Prince like that, too. Michael, unfortunately, had his hair straightened, and he also had a high-pitched speaking voice. And he was weird, but not dangerous. So what did they do? They came out and they said, oh, he's into dudes. At first it was jokes, he's into dudes. But then nobody could really say anything about who he was with. And so then it became, oh, he's into kids. Now we can get into the politics and the difference between his money and Mr. Samuel's money. The difference between his fame and Mr. Samuel's fame. We can get into that. These are true. I'm not comparing apples and oranges in this case. What I am saying is that you do have a similar motive. Somebody wanted to discredit Mr. Jackson. Somebody wants to discredit, plenty want to discredit Mr. Samuels. Now, those who wanted to discredit Mr. Jackson and Mr. Samuels each had very similar goals and motives. And that is the stifling of black manhood and masculinity. Black machismo really doesn't bother them too much. Long as you don't aim it at massa, they don't mind that. They actually like that. It has a place. Black machismo is when you gangbang on a corner and shoot at people from a rival gang. That's machismo. Masculinity is when you decide to make business and power moves if you can, and really pretty much to take your manhood seriously and your responsibility seriously. They actually like the machismo long as you aim it at each other. But you know, the real manhood masculinity is what they want to stifle in us. And unfortunately, neither of those two really went with that program. Neither Mr. Jackson nor Mr. Samuels really going along with the program. Keep that in mind. Understand this. Remember when Mr. Jackson faced what he faced, he did not have nearly the support from the gynocracy that R. Kelly got. Oh, R. Kelly got support from the gynocracy. Y'all remember that. When the rumors began, he got the support, and there was even a good bit of, or wavering support, but a lot less of it, and more anti-support or more opposition from sisters when the charges became formalized. Now, when the charges became formalized and the rumors were now court documents stating that he had done X, Y, and Z, that's when at that point, you know, there was a whole cancel culture and Me Too, and, oh, they're ready to go in on him. And it wound up that as soon as he went broke, them ladies with whom he lived, they were defending him and saying, yeah, we share him, so what? All of a sudden had bad things to say about him because he went broke. Because he ain't got no money. He can't afford them draws no more. Well, the thing is that in his case, there may be more evidence. That might really be the case. There's more evidence, but unfortunately, what I'm getting at here is that this was going to happen to him no matter what. He was going to face those exact same accusations no matter what. Mr. Jackson, who actually had no such evidence against him, and even the police, even the detectives, said that their investigation concluded that they couldn't find evidence of wrongdoing. And they admitted this in the report. And he didn't even have to settle out of court. His insurance company chose to. But even in a case like that, keep this in mind. Even in that case, the one with evidence against him for having done stuff like this, assalamu alaikum, that was R. Kelly. And he had a good bit of support for a lot longer. And the one with no evidence against him, I'm not saying that the gun actually necessarily went in on him, went after him, but they did not support him the same way. And it's unfortunate that it's going to be the exact same thing when it comes down to, I hope not. I hope to be wrong. But the playbook, that's what I'm getting at, is that the playbook in this case is to level certain accusations, and when they don't work, you take it, you step up. One of them, see, the GAY accusation has always been part of the playbook. Shout out to Dwight Hayes for pulling my coat to that, dropping a dime, getting me hip to that. But there's more too. You see, the next step in that, it's actually a subset of that first step. First, the GAY accusations. When that don't work, if you can, and it's easier actually in this case, if you can, you start with the PEDO accusations. And all that takes is going to be someone who needs money and has kids that they can get to say whatever it is that they want to say. Now, investigations may bust those things up. But the point I'm making is that even still, the point is that if they find an opportunity to get that, they will. And this is why I'm going to say to you, it is imperative, you all, we must, if you have access to reach him, prepare him for that. Now, I think he's very smart. I just think that he was more prepared for the GAY accusations than he's going to be for any PEDO accusations. But someone who has access to him must pull his coattail and let him know, Mr. Samuels, even though this dude only supports you conditionally and he is very one-sided by his own confession, he brought up a point, and that is that in addition to the GAY accusations, especially since you're able to handle those pretty well, they're going to start with some PEDO accusations. So go ahead and have an attorney on retainer. And this way, whenever someone does say something like this, not only would an investigation very unlikely show any evidence, but likewise, you must be ready to countersue even for that and to get even more damages. But the best way to have that situation or to prevent it is to be prepared from the very jump and to be able to let your enemies know that you are prepared. When you say, okay, I already know what the deal is, I'm not going to be alone with any kids, even if I'm related to them. You won that part. However, since I'm not going to be, and I'm not into that anyway, the minute someone says something like that, understand that as soon as that investigation fails to prove any criminal wrongdoing, I'm going civilly against you. And don't even try to get civil damages, because I'm already going to be coming at you. You're going to be busy defending yourself civilly, because I will have proof that you said it and that there was nobody was able to show any evidence of any wrongdoing. Mr. Samuels, get your armor ready, because unfortunately, these accusations, well, they're pretty bad, man. But they stick. They really do. It was probably, honestly, when Mr. Jackson began to pass away, he probably felt relief at that point. Because of that. Because that is nasty. I wouldn't wish that on too many people. I don't wish that on anybody that's not actually guilty of it. Thank you all for listening. Appreciate that. Sorry for a long absence, and when the vacation is over, I'll try to be more regular with this. Black heart, black mind, blackout. Assalamu alaikum and black heterosexual non-select male power just because they don't like it, and black patriarchy until extinction or judgment day.